All right, I want to move quick because we got to him 15 minutes late. I had to pull him out of a meeting with investigators and lawyers about how they can even use the bombshell stuff they've got. And he was the first guy I know, even before the current head of Blackwater and XZ came out with the same info about the pedophile rings in New York and the situation with now convicted child pervert, underage pervert Wiener. And, of course, that's Doug Hagman. But let me just say this about Brandon Tatum. Out of nowhere, 60 million views, one video, tens of millions the other videos, and he's just super, when I say articulate, the left's always like, oh, you mean a black guy's articulate? You're being condescending. No, I mean more articulate than me, a lot more. So not patronizing, the opposite, like let people have success. And then he's a listener for years. It's humbling because it lets me know I see that everywhere where I don't do the best job sometimes, but I'm the first a lot of times to get info out because I'm willing to be attacked, and then people resonate, they research it, and we have victory. So our greatest successes are the talking points, which are based in reality and research. Speaking of that, I'm not going to play it because of time constraints, but Doug Hagman was on, the 26th, 25th, we can put it on screen, I forget the exact date, we had it up earlier, and said my sources around the country that he sent out and paid for, that's how serious this is, with his investigations group, around the country, said they're getting weapons, they're planning violence, they've got sophisticated folks handling them. That now has all broke a month and 3 days later, exactly as he said, with Louder, with Crowder, InfoWars, other reports, and the police are thankful but aren't even allowed to arrest people. And then the school officials cover it up on these universities. So, Hagman, what you reported over a month ago here is now breaking, and I'm sure you have a lot more info since the month passed.
Yeah, Alex, and thanks. Yeah, you know, it's going to get even worse. What is taking place? Oh, by the way, in Austin tomorrow there is a meeting of Refuse Fascism. You know, if I can say this, from 3 to 5 p.m. at Genuine Joe's Coffee House, right there in Austin on West Anderson Lane. So if anyone wants to drop by just to see what Refuse Fascism local group Austin is doing, there it is, Genuine Joe's Coffee House. But we're seeing these meetings these organizational meetings all over the country. But what's most disturbing here, in addition to, of course, the funding that goes back to Alliance for Global Justice in one case, and of course all of the normal groups, the Soros-connected groups, we're seeing some funding that's a degree or two separation away from the Organizing for Action, Obama's group. And I say that you know, with some reservation, but when you start to unwind the money trail here, and that's what we do, is follow the money, we can see where the Organizing for Action is part of this, as well as, in one case, one of the very well-known opposition research groups that provided the DNC and the Democrats information about Donald Trump and specifically Donald Trump, is actually sharing some office space with a local Refuse Fascism chapter.
Oh, yeah, we know Soros and Obama are on record funding and protecting it. And the question is, what does Trump do to deal with it, or what do we do?
Well, we've been dealing with local police departments. The federal, under Sessions, it's been very difficult to establish a beachhead where we can give them information with the Sessions Justice Department, which I find very difficult to comprehend. So we've been dealing with the local and state authorities on this, on the ground level, and they've been very receptive taking our information, because what we're seeing too is the training for combat. We're talking about weapons caches. We're talking about
and they're on videos now saying we're going to stab and shoot people.
Very much, yes, yeah, and they're holding webinars too, which is just, it blows my mind. We've been able to infiltrate those, but the meetings themselves are difficult to sometimes to really chase after because of the decentralization and the way they've got their planning.
But you first reported over a month ago, you had your guy in one of their meetings.
Yes. Oh, yes. And we've got, and that's gone.
And it wasn't just a bunch of meth head kids you were saying. It was sophisticated operatives handling them. That's really because again, these young people are the cover, I believe. I'm going to ask you about that when we come back, for more sophisticated attacks, which they say is the 100th anniversary of the October surprise. Stay with us. Doug Hagman's our guest. He first broke the news with his investigators across the country. Hagman and Hagman is the radio TV show. He owns an investigative training service for police. Great researcher. Looking at this, Well, instead of me asking the questions, what other big tidbits should we know? Because it looks to me like they're getting ready for a October 100-year replay of the Bolshevik Revolution. They say they are, Doug Hagman. I have a big article here where Paul Watson links to a bunch of videos and their own statements that they're going to do it. I mean, they're saying, we're getting ready for a violent overthrow. We're going to kill a bunch of people. You've got this Army officer that just graduated West Point saying he's getting ready to, you know, get violent. And they're just walking around organizing violence.
Exactly. And Paul Joseph Watson did a wonderful job on the article. The links are important there. And of course, the November 4th event is important. But what they're planning subsequent to that event, they're planning to, and I want to be careful when I say this, they're planning to disrupt all town halls that feature Republican or the conservative leaders. They're planning to disrupt even events, all school events, campus events, that is, I should say.
But nobody ever disrupts all their Hollywood crap.
Exactly. Now there's one thing that's interesting. We're finding in a couple of different instances where we can actually verify that some of the, especially on a city or local levels, some of the city and local officials who work in positions of authority within city halls, whether they're city managers or within the mayoral staffs, even in some of the coastal cities on both coasts, but even within the heartland of America, are actually assisting and providing information to refuse fascism. So
let's be clear. We already know this, but this is more confirmation. They've got moles in government basically giving intel to their operatives, and we know they give them safe harbor to commit crimes on these major universities to be able to extinguish free speech. So this is, we know a lot of professors are getting arrested, assaulting people dressed up with the mask on. So what we know is they have some serious PhD command and control.
Well, right, and they're also being assisted, like I said, by people that hold positions of authority within city governments, and that's very disconcerting, given the fact that you've got the possibility or the potential for actually these people being able to dox the or to unveil the names and addresses of, for example, some of the local leaders who are conservative, who are anti-fascism for real, as opposed to this pseudo-anti-fascist movement. And we're seeing that. So the threat to the individuals who are out there politically, the political leadership, the conservative political leadership is incredible, especially given the fact that they've got this automatic pipeline, and they're refining this pipeline of information through these seminars, the local meetups and meet and greets, as well as on social networking. You've pointed this out, but the danger, in my view, anyway, and what we found. The dangerous period is not going to be necessarily November 4th. It's going to be what happens after that, and they've declared war on Donald Trump and Pence. That's a given, but they're going more local. So I would urge anyone in a position, a conservative, politically conservative position on a local level, and even some. There's even some discussion about attacking some evangelical churches, and okay, now
we just saw that last weekend.
Yeah, well, exactly. But let me just say this on a grander scale. With that information,
stay there. I want you to recap that, and then I want to ask you the big question, because sometimes they do some disinfo, but I agree they have their political launch in November, and then they build towards violence after that. But then also October's the day of the revolution. So I see it all building up even earlier. Let's war game this. When should we well, we'll talk about it. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. A tale of two cities. The paradox. It's always a paradox. To the parallax view. We see people waking up to political correctness, waking up to nationalism being the answer, free market being the answer, as if that's rocket science. Look at the historical examples. We see the poisonous Hollywood arrogance being exposed. We see Hillary still arrogantly stomping around, only digging her political hole deeper. But then we have massive reports on Infowars.com, on PresentPlanet.com, NewsWars.com, and, of course, on Hagman and Hagman.com and all the other sites. We'll put up his site, the Hagman Report. Weaponization.com. He's got a bunch of sites, Northeast Intelligence Network, you name it. Excellent website, excellent shows. You've got all this going on, and they're not going to give up. And so they say November 4th, November 5th, we have the videos in the story, Antifa plans civil war to overthrow the government. They say November 4th, they launched this. They're already blocking roads. We can show you the video and saying, it's begun, it's beginning. And then they say, we're going to kill cops. We're going to stab people. We're going to kill white people. It's mainly whites leading it. Usually, I'm not against trannies, but it's usually like tranny men saying they're going to kill everybody. I guess they're on Prozac or something. But I don't know. Tranny men. God, I can't handle the insanity anymore. The point is tranny persons. And it's not that I don't have problems with some corrupt police or I don't have problems with issues, but it's like a full-on group of crazy people wanting a huge civil war when we actually have a president trying to turn the economy back on. So in closing, talking to Doug Hagman of the Hagman Report, great investigative journalist and private investigator that trains police in multiple states with all his great sources. What are the other big points people should know? And yes, I tend to agree. They do what they say they're going to do by launching this attack November 4th. And then that's political. And then it builds, and they hope copycat violence, hashtag hunt Republicans, like we saw Democrat strategists putting out. And then what, a false flag or something to make them the victims, like they're trying to have clashes, hoping somebody does something violent. To then, you know, they hurt a bunch of people, kill a bunch of people at a church or whatever. That's cute and funny. But one woman gets run over. It's terrible, but they say we're all guilty. I mean, it seems like they're going to need to add a false flag to this for it to then be a big enough blow up to give the cover for the attempted removal of Trump, which all of Mueller's people and the CIA globalists have said is coming. They say now is the time. They said 2 months ago, that they would have him removed. Here we are 2 months later. Are they behind, or what do you think?
I think it's a question, from what we've seen, it's a question of organization. It was initially a matter of funding. That seems to be taken care of via the Alliance for Global Justice. But now I think it's a matter of organization. And what you mentioned about the false flag, they have used in the past the phrase righteous beatings, meaning to applying that, of course, to their enemies. Now what they're saying is we're willing to take righteous beatings for the right publicity. And we're seeing this and we're hearing this in these local chapter meetings that they're dispersed. So I think in order,
they may beat each other up because they saw the Christian Prayer Group 3 weeks ago, as you pointed out, take the beatings, black, white, you name it, together. That destroyed them. That was their Mahatma Gandhi moment, their Martin Luther King, their Jesus Christ moment. So now, absolutely, they would then have their own people beat each other up.
Well, either that or put themselves in a position to get wounded in some way, some very public way. And then, of course, that will allow them the righteous response, which is another phrase that they're throwing about. And we're seeing now as well, the Muslims, and I have to throw this out there, this is not meant to be anything but the truth here, where some of the training manuals used by Al-Qaeda, used by, for example, the Al-Batar series, and the Inspire magazine, which is written in English, being actually used for instructional material for some of these local chapters. And the
left has publicly adopted the flag, the regalia. They love it. They think it's sexy.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, you know, from Robert Avakian to Carl Dix on down, Avakian, of course, founding Refuse Fascism, what we're seeing at this point, and I think that in this order, and I don't know the timetable, but I do suspect you're going to see essentially attacks on properties, Molotov cocktails, and the targets will be churches, police stations, attacks on police themselves, police officers. Of course, you know, that's
and by the way, just like Al-Qaeda, like you said, or Inspire magazine, they put out the propaganda hoping lone wolves activate, just like the Sudanese Muslim that shot, 9 people, killing 1. He said, I went there to kill white Christians. So, I mean, it's happening.
Yes, yes. So the town halls, especially those hosting political conservatives and any type of Christian conservative biased meeting group, whatever, or or I shouldn't say anti, but well, anti-Sharia groups are targets. Those are the primary high list priority targets. And then, of course, just the supporters of Donald Trump. Anyone with a red MAGA hat, for example, or wearing a Trump shirt. It's open season on everyone like that. And I don't want to sound alarmist, but this is what they're telling the foot soldiers.
And what do you think they're hoping? Maybe not blow up a federal building and blame it on us, but they attack enough folks, the media covers it up, a few lone people fight back, then that's billed as an attack on them like they tried with Charlottesville, and then it blows up bigger?
Yeah, and I think the Rahm Emanuel quote, "Never let a crisis go to waste." I think that's kind of the mantra here, where looking at this, let's make sure that we can engage, cause chaos, of course, overwhelm the system, and really tax the EMS, the police, tax the response, even to the extent where, think SDS back in the 70s and 60s. Along with the communist groups and the Weathermen. The fact is they didn't do enough back then. They're saying, look, we learned our lesson back then. We didn't win then. Now we're going to have to do a little bit more. And well, not a little bit more, much more. So everyone's a target. This is open season on everyone. And again, I don't want to sound alarmist, but this is what they're saying in these groups. And the tapes, or I call them tapes, the recordings have been
sure. Let me ask you this then in closing. HagmannReport.com is the main website you want to go to. I just threw out a few others out of memory, HagmannReport.com. Let me ask you this. Clearly, it's a 100-year anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. They admit that's their plan. They're all activating. They have these army officers decloaking, saying, yes, we're communists. We're gonna get you. They're not getting in trouble. I mean, this is just, they've been breeding like termites underneath the floorboards here. It looks like they're getting ready to launch their big physical assault. They've lost politically. Mueller's an idiot. Everything's falling apart. They're in trouble. I think they're going to try something desperate and violent on an organized scale, have the media phrase it like it's good, claim it's all Trump's fault, and try to remove him. That said, their whole NFL launch to create this environment and turn up the pressure has gone flat. So regardless, even if this thing goes off as a dud or fails, I think it's clear to say we are in for some really dangerous, crazy times. And I think everybody needs to be going into October, into November, November 4th, as you said. We are not out offensively looking for trouble. But you see somebody Molotov cocktails, burning stuff, shooting people, have your firearm, defend yourself, and light them up. Because, you know, everybody needs to know, do not offensively do anything. But you need to be ready, especially if you're cops. And again, people say, oh, you just worship the police now. They've used the cops as a scapegoat for political warfare. There's some bad cops, good cops. It's one of our institutions. They want to overthrow that, bully it into submission. And yes, they are shooting cops in the back of the head, killing them in patrol cars every week. It's all the same group. That's all a beta test to just get the cops used to it. So when the main assault comes, cops sit around and don't know what they've been hit by. Every one of these Antifa, every one of these communist groups, every one of these Congress people that push this, they're all guilty. Because if they launch the real Bolshevik attack, I think they may be, we're talking hundreds of dead cops in the middle of the night, shot in their cruisers. They think the cops are going to then roll up, send up the white flag, and you know, kiss their ass. That's already been the plan. Bring in the federal review boards, say they're sorry. CNN said, hey, more cops are dying. You better stop, you know, realizing you're bad. You better go under Loretta Lynch's Strong Police, Strong Communities Act. I mean, this is really brazen bullying. Don't they get, America was asleep, not wimps. They're starting to wake us up. I think they better understand that, well, they don't know because they've never actually got hurt. I think this is a bunch of wimps trying to practice war. And I don't think they understand that they're about to really get put in a wood chipper.
Good points, all, and I believe that they have mischaracterized the right or the conservatives' temperament or courteous lack of response or tolerance, shall we say, for acceptance, and that's a wrong thing to do. You know, again, what I see taking place here is really the attacks against the buildings, the attacks against the police, the attacks against the political and social conservatives, and it will gradually increase because it's almost mentally that they believe that Lynch or Holder is still in the Justice Department, and perhaps they have holdovers there, but certainly they're not getting much resistance at the federal level. So they feel empowered where they can go off and do whatever they need to do without much potential for punitive consequences. That's the attitude, at least, that we've seen.
Well, I see anybody in a black mask waving a gun around. I mean, these people, a parrot tests its perch. And they've been testing, and they think they're just going to get away with all this. And I'm a target, you're a target, and these people don't scare me. America rolling over does. And you know what? I know in my heart, Doug, America's not going to roll over. I know if they pull this, I don't want them to do this, but the Machiavelli in me, the devil in me, almost hopes they do, because then they're going to get back 100 times what they did. It's like the Japanese attacking Pearl Harbor. I mean, but they're so domesticated, so cowardly. But it doesn't mean they can't play video games, practicing to kill people, and can't kill a lot of folks. But it's a hell of a time to be alive. Anything else, Doug?
No, and you're right. They've got strong thumbs from the video games, but they've got no idea necessarily what our response is going to be. And I think they're underestimating what the typical American response will be. But that's not stopping them from planning and from promoting the at this point the righteous violence to fight the fascist Donald Trump and his agenda. So I think we're going to see a ramp up in violence, perhaps as early as around November 4th. And I would be very, very concerned in the time period between then and Christmas by not the necessarily the Islamic groups, but by the domestic terrorist groups, especially and including Revcom, Antifa, Refuse Fascism, and Indivisible.
Well, they're using Islam as their muscle. I really see in the tea leaves, Antifa's the cover. The media is already preparing to flush them by now, going, okay, yeah, maybe they're terrorists. Then they use Islamic groups to really carry out the attacks, and then basically the Antifa gets flushed.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and that's a great model, and it's geographically, it's not specific to any one geographical region yet, but that's the model that we're seeing, especially on the West Coast, because we've got investigators on the West Coast, East Coast, and a couple other places, without getting into too much into detail, that have infiltrated these groups. And actually, we bumped into one. I'm not going to say a federally, one state officer there who was working undercover. It's kind of funny, but the bottom line is the interest doesn't appear to be with the federal government, but with the authorities in the state and county and local.
I can't believe the feds aren't watching this, even if they're behind it, because the deep state. Why would you just let this run rampant, having even no idea what it's doing? It's super dangerous. All right, Doug Hagman, thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank you.
In ancient times, man roamed the earth in a constant state of hunting or being hunted. Introducing Caveman, where cutting-edge science meets ancient super nutrients. Secure your bottle right now at InfoWarsStore.com.